Hey girl, so I heard what you said about feeling like you are reaching your breaking point or you're at your breaking point. Like, no matter what you do, it feels like it doesn't work or it's not good enough. It seems as though you're questioning whether or not this life is meant for you to be living the way that you are because things just has not been working out the way that you want it to. And if I am talking to you, you're definitely not alone. As someone who has gone through that season and has come out of it recently, I want to help you through it as much as I possibly can because I know what it's like to feel like you have nothing left to give. It just seems like no matter what you do, it doesn't make any sense. And you keep kind of trying to lean on the old things, expecting a new result, and then frustrating yourself even more. Like I said, I've been there, I've done that, and at some point, you just have to lean into the breaking point. So, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about some key points about hitting rock bottom because, like I said, a lot of people have gone through that season. And I think everybody goes through that season when it's the right time, especially when it seems as though we've kind of veered off track a little bit. I'll share some of my own experiences, and then I'll wrap up some key takeaways and some resources by the end of today's conversation because, of course, I want to be as helpful and resourceful as possible. So grab your drink, whatever it may be. Tonight, I am drinking my Rubio's Masala Chai. It is from I don't remember where it's from, but it's really good. So go ahead and grab your drink and get cozy because this is going to be a good conversation, especially when we talk about it from the perspective of why losing control allows you to gain that freedom or gain the freedom and balance, especially in your faith, finances, and your womanhood. So let's kind of understand the breaking point because oftentimes we think that our breaking point is where we actually do the breaking, where we actually see the transformation. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It is pretty much the beginning. Um, it's the moment where you feel like you definitely have nothing left. You are at your limit. There's nothing else that you can think of. There's nothing else that you can do, and you kind of feel hopeless. It feels like the world is kind of falling apart around you and the things that you once knew for comfort aren't comforting in you anymore or they are foreign to you now. And I was there September 2022 and it just got to the point where I had nothing. Like if I didn't get to my breaking point and reach out to God and say, hey, I have nothing else to give. I need you to step in because if I keep going down the path that I'm going down, I don't know what life is going to look like for me in the next couple of days. Okay. It was really that serious. Life was crumbling around me, finances, friendships, marriage, my mental state, my identity. Like I had nothing. And I can laugh about it now because I am super grateful to have gone through that season of breaking or getting to that breaking point because now I have a level of peace that surpasses all understanding. And I got to learn what it really meant when David said, God is close to the brokenhearted. So that's actually the scripture, Psalm 34, verse 18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. So in this context, it was a Psalm of David written after he escaped the king by pretending that he was crazy. Uh, he expressed the gratitude to God for delivering him from a dangerous situation. It's a psalm of praise, thanksgiving, and encouragement, emphasizing God's care, provision, and protection for those who seek him. In this verse, David is reassuring us that God is compassionate and attentive, especially to those who are experiencing deep pain or sorrow. It speaks to God's presence and saving grace, reminding the brokenhearted that he is near and ready to offer comfort, support, and healing. Once I got to that point that day and I said, God, I'm tired. I'm pretty much giving up and I'm giving you the opportunity and the room to do what you got to do because I have nothing else that I can try. immediately that is when I started to see a shift in myself. I gave myself 7 days to pretty much hear from God. And I didn't need that 7 days or those 7 days. I started to have a renewed vision, a renewed heart, mindset, and all kinds of things. So that breaking point isn't just, oh, this is where I'm going to see transformation immediately. That is the beginning of the transformation, because where the transformation happens is the actual breaking. And once I lost control, that's when I started to actually gain freedom. And I don't even look at the world or my life or anything. I don't look at anything the same anymore. So if you are someone right now who is pretty much feeling the same way, and you are at this point where you are at your breaking point or you're close to hitting your breaking point, I would say take a step back and allow yourself to acknowledge that you are at your breaking point. I know we are someone, or we are people who like to push through, because that's all we know. We have to push through. We have to figure it out. We have to wear all the capes and all the hats. We have to have all of these different experiences that we need to maintain, because if not, we are going to crumble. But if we can actually just take a step back and acknowledge where we are and be present with ourselves, we can start to see the shift that we are needing in our lives and that you're needing in your life. So once we understand the breaking point, we need to talk about letting go of control. And this is coming from someone who is a recovering control freak. I am not someone who likes to go with the flow. I am not someone who, is excited about seeing where the day takes us or seeing where the day takes me. I need to know the details. I need to understand why, and especially when it's not making sense. So you can imagine where obedience kind of takes a hit, because if I don't understand why I need to do something, I have a hard time doing that thing. Um, but letting go of that control is very helpful, although it seems counterintuitive. The more that we are grasping on the things that we think that we need to maintain, the harder it is for us to actually get the things that we need and want in our life. Um, there's this analogy, not even analogy, but there's this thing that I heard from Dave Chappelle a couple of years ago when he was talking about his like contract issues. And there's a particular monkey that people try to capture with salt traps. And the salt trap is someone will put a block of salt or whatever the case is in a hole, and a monkey will find it. Well, what's happening is the monkey will try to reach into that hole to grab the salt, trying to escape with that salt. But because his hand is so wrapped around that salt and it's so tight, he can't get his hand out of that hole. So he ends up getting trapped because he didn't let go. It's kind of the same thing with us. We're trapped in wanting to grasp onto that thing and hold onto it tight, and then we end up trapped in the same situations that we're trying to get out of. We are trying to control that thing. We want that thing. We want to make sure that we obtain that thing. So we're going to grab onto it as tight as we can, not realizing that the true freedom lies in us actually letting go and opening our hands. And when I heard that analogy, or when I heard that concept, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit more, because again, as someone who is a recovering control freak, it's hard letting go, because I need to know all of the details. And how God operates, he doesn't give you the details. He gives you instructions bit by bit. You won't get your answers. You won't get your answers unless you are obedient. Another example is I have been asking God a couple of questions over these last couple of years, and I'm just now getting the answers to these questions simply because I am now being obedient. God, why did you want me to get my degree in marketing? No answer. But now I'm using that degree and the knowledge that I've obtained over these last 7 to 8 years in business to help with my church and help with my business and my ministry. Um, God, why did you want me to finish school before you gave me my next direction? Well, because I need you to clear your plate first before you can be trusted with anything else. You don't get the answers and you don't get the freedom that you're looking for until you start being obedient, even though it looks hard, even though it feels like it's counterintuitive because you don't understand the entire picture. That obedience is going to be something that allows you to get to the freedom that you're looking for. When God told me last year to make room for, he didn't even tell me what to make room for. He just said, make room. And when I started to figure out different things of how I needed to make room in my life for him, I started to see what he meant by making room. I needed to let go of my control. I needed to let go of the ideas and the plans that I've had for myself. I needed to let go of certain people or certain ideas of people so I can actually get to the point where he needed me to be. And losing control and letting go of control has been frightening, but the most freeing thing that I have ever done or experienced in my life. Now, my question for you is, has there been a moment in your life where you actually let go of control, or you've been prompted to let go of your control and it actually led to something amazing, led to something that you were wanting, needing, or you got to experience something that you never experienced before? Let me know. I really want to know. I want to have these type of conversations back and forth. Now, when it comes to losing control and letting go of that control, like I said, it is a little bit difficult. So I would say start small. Start small with something that you can release maybe today. Whether it's the idea that you have to complete all 50 million tasks by the end of the night, right? Maybe you let go of one thing. Maybe that's something that's not a priority and you can push it off. Maybe it's letting go of the idea that you have to know all of the details, because sometimes the details come as you continue to work. Maybe it's letting go of that friend or the idea of that friend, so you can actually make room for people in your life that you really need, and that would be beneficial for you and your journey and your walk with God. Maybe it's something that God told you to over and over and over, and you kept putting it off because it was uncomfortable or that idea was uncomfortable. It may be something that popped into your mind now, but start off small, because once you start off small and you start letting go of control and you start to build that trust with God, letting go of that control becomes a lot easier. You are no longer trapped in the same cycles that you've been trapped in over and over and over again, whether it is with your faith. You know, I have come this year, I've come out of my 9 years of wilderness of not talking to God. You know, that was a sense of me not talking to God or having a relationship with God was a sense of control that I had with, protecting myself from people in the church, when really it was hurting me more. So when I let go of that idea of I'm protecting myself, I got closer to God and I started to feel a sense of, the peace that I needed in my life. Excuse me. When I let go of certain ideas with how to manage finance, because I've been in finance for the last 15 years. Worldly finance and kingdom finance are completely different. So being able to let go of what I thought you should do financially, because it's what I've been taught, it's what I've been working in for the last over a decade. It allowed me to see finance and money a lot differently. It allowed me to look at it through a people lens instead of a numbers lens. It allowed me to allowed me to identify the idea that money is a people thing. It's not something that is black and white, because life isn't black and white. Faith isn't black and white. Those things need to be married so that we can have balance in life. Then I needed to let go I needed to let go of the idea of what I thought womanhood was, because I always felt like I was out of place. I never felt like, I fit in. I never felt like I was the typical woman of, oh, I like to go, the stereotypical stuff. I like to go shopping. I like um, the maintenance things, the hair, nails, facials, or not being able to really fit in with other women and have those friendships. I let go of those ideas and the things that I've learned about female friendships over my entire life, so I can make room to have a community that actually resonates around me and what I need, and so I can pour into those people as well. um, Eventually letting go allows you to see things from a different perspective, and you don't even look at life the same anymore. The things that used to bother you don't bother you. The things that you used to be anxious about, you're not anxious about anymore. We already know the Bible talks about, or tells us not to be anxious about anything. And I believe that's Philippians 4. Yeah, Philippians 4. Yes. Philippians 4, verses 6 through 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And letting go of control allowed me to see that once I started praying and having conversations with God about my anxieties, the things that I really cared about and was causing me to feel like I was in this hamster wheel of being anxious, I no longer have that. The world can be crumbling around me right now. I mean, the world is pretty much on fire right now, but there's nothing. I'm not going to say there's nothing. My amount of anxiety that I have is very minimal now. I used to pretty much self medicate with CBD every time I had anxiety because it was bad. Like my heart felt like it was pumping, about to beat outside my chest. I couldn't focus. I was a terrible nail biter. Like it was terrible. I don't have that anxiety anymore. I can't tell you the last time I've used CBD or any other coping mechanism. It's just, I have a level of understanding that if I feel like things are getting out of control, I know who I can go to. I know to talk to God. I know to lean on God, because how is it going to benefit me? How is it going to benefit you if you are constantly worrying about anything? And as a matter of fact, that's another scripture. uh Matthew 6:34. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has its own troubles. Because I can have this understanding and I can let go of this control, I don't have the anxiety anymore. I don't feel like I have to worry about any and everything now. I get to operate in the gifts, I get to operate in the assignment God has called me to do. Um, because now I know I can lean on God. He has proven to me time and time again that he's not going to fail. He hasn't failed me. So why is he going to fail me now? And it's going to be the same thing for you. Losing control allows you to get to a level of freedom that you can't even fathom. Your situation might not even change immediately, but your outlook will change. You might have been stressing about, oh, my job, I don't make enough money on my job. But as soon as you start casting those cares onto God and letting him know where you are at, and you are so done, you're so close to just handing in the towel, you start to have a renewed mind and a renewed vision, and you look at things a lot differently. You might not get a raise on your job, but you start to realize, okay, yeah, I might not make enough money, or I feel like I don't make enough money, but my bills are paid. I can still buy groceries. I can still buy gas. I can still handle my basic necessities. And I still have the opportunity to change my job later. God still has the opportunity to bless me with a different job later. Um, it's once we change that outlook, it allows us to also make room for what God can do too. So once we let go, we got to talk about more about leaning on God at your breaking point, because leaning on your breaking point or leaning into that can sound pretty reckless if it's done incorrectly. There are so many people who have gotten to their breaking point and they've just given up on life. They shut themselves in, they fell into depression, they kind of gave into, worldly coping mechanisms, and it wasn't beneficial to them. But when you lean into your breaking point while leaning into God at the same time, it sets you up to be able to start your life over on a foundation that's not going to fail you. Where I was in my breaking point was because I got to a point where I strayed so far away from God that I built my life on a foundation that if something meaningful landed on it, my life would have crumbled. That thing would have been meaningless. Everything that I built my life on was outside of God. And if I was going to be operating in the assignment that God called me to do, I couldn't do that on the foundation that I built my life on. So being able to lean on God when you hit your breaking point allows you to start your life over from scratch so you can build your life on something solid and meaningful. And so when things look crazy, you have something to fall back on. When things started looking crazy before I started my life over, um, I my thoughts were unhealthy. My coping mechanisms were unhealthy. I did not like who I was at that time because I leaned into my depression. I leaned into my anxiety. I leaned into things that weren't of God at all. And it did more harm than good. Luckily, nothing was irreparable, but it still took some time to get me back to where I needed to be. I think when it comes to leaning on God, we overcomplicate what that actually means and what that looks like. Leaning on God sometimes is just sitting in your room by yourself or in your car on your lunch break and just talking to God. That's it. Like being real honest with your conversation, not this holier than thou archaic prayer speech. Talk to God as some talk to God like the person you need him to be at that moment, whether that's your father, whether that's a friend, whether that is a therapist. You talk to God as if that is somebody that you can depend on. Normally, let's say, for example, something good happened in your life. You call your best friend and be like, girl, this is what happened. That's the same way I talk to God. Like, listen, God, I don't know, man. You told me to do this. This does not sound right. If I'm going to be honest with you, this looks completely crazy from what I'm thinking about or from what you were telling me to do. Like, talk to him and just have that conversation and actually wait for a response. And I'm not talking about sit still and wait for a response. Just be open to him. On Mondays, what I do on Mondays, I deep clean the house pretty much. And I normally don't have any music on. I don't turn on the TV. It's just me in a quiet house and I'm talking to God through the day. And I'm just having a conversation with him in my mind and I get my downloads. Sometimes it takes a little longer to hear back. Sometimes, it's instant depending on what I'm talking to him about. But I'm giving him that room, that space to communicate with me. And That's what it looks like to just lean on God. When things start to look crazy, listen, Lord, Susan at my job is really irking my last nerve. Um, I need you to help me. Direct me on how I should deal with her. Because if I deal with her, I'm gonna lay hands on her and not like the way that you want us to. Like, it's really just being vulnerable and open and talking to God like he is someone who can solve all of our problems because he can. I think oftentimes, we put God in this box of, we hear that we should fear the Lord, and it doesn't mean be scared of God. It means respect him, but it also means go to him in his full capacity. Go to him and acknowledge who he is and who he can be in your life. It doesn't have it doesn't have to be super complicated. It doesn't have to be this ridiculous fall on my face type of thing. Sometimes you're going to be in that season where leaning on God looks like you are falling on your face. But sometimes it's just really, listen, God, I need your help. I'm tired. I don't know what to do, and I need you to guide my steps. I'm giving you the permission. I'm giving you the space to do what you got to do because I'm at a loss. When you start to allow that vulnerability between you and God, it opens the door for so much more in your life. It allows you to experience that balance that you essentially that you've been working for and wanting. And balance doesn't mean that you are juggling everything equally. Balance means that you are allowing yourself uh, the space to handle things as they come while maintaining your priorities. It's not something as if, oh, balance means I have this strict schedule that I can keep to. I can maintain my life on this rigid schedule. Um, no, balance means that I have the flexibility and I have the space to manage the things that come at me within my capacity. That's it. It doesn't mean that you handle everything perfectly or you balance everything perfectly as if it's on a scale. That's not what balance means. And as someone who has come out this season of breaking, I I wish that there were some tools that were available to help me navigate that space because I had to do it on my own. I didn't have like a church home at the time going through my breaking season. I literally was in a season of isolation. And I'll take that back. I had a friend at the time who was helping me through that season of breaking, but there was only so much that she can do. I didn't have the tools or or the guidance that I felt like I needed. So what I did is I created like some little prompts to help you through your season of breaking. If you are on my A Balanced Life newsletter, it will go out tomorrow morning. Or excuse me, not tomorrow morning. My dog has surgery, but it'll go out tomorrow. And it'll just have a little exercise to help you start navigating your season of breaking. If you're not on the newsletter, all you need to do is click the link in the description box and register or sign up. It's free, and you'll get the notification once it goes out. But it will literally help you start navigating your breaking season and what that is going to look like for you and what you want it to look like for you. There are going to be some prompts, there are going to be some questions for you to answer for yourself, so you can get an idea of what this season is going to be and how you would like it to go, and also what scriptures that you can reference, because just the scriptures that I mentioned now, I've been able to live those scriptures and see it come to life in my life because I leaned on God. So before we finish the conversation, my last thought, again, talking about what balance actually is, it doesn't mean that you're always just this calm and collected individual. Life is not like that. We already know that. It just means that you are learning to ride the waves and take things as they come. it's also giving you that practice to realize that you are not to help you realize that you're not in control of anything. We like to feel like we are in control, and we like to feel like we have everything under our control and taken care of, but just the slightest inconvenience in our day lets us know that we control nothing. It means that we get to learn what it's like to lean on God and know what leaning on God feels like. As someone who has also come out of this hyper independence era of my life, the more I lean on God, the more I feel comforted and the more I feel supported. I don't feel like I have to be this super, I don't know why I'm tearing up right now. I don't feel like I have to be this super guarded individual anymore, because I am able to lean on God and express the level of vulnerability that I have and have this freedom. I'm not even gonna lie, starting this series has been anxiety inducing, because I'm having to show up and be honest with my emotions and my walk and how it has affected my faith, finances, and my womanhood journey. And because I've learned what it's like to lean on God and feel that support and feel the comfort knowing that I don't just have to have me anymore, where I don't have to be this super guarded woman anymore. Like, I can't do my assignment if I'm super guarded, if that makes sense. It's allowed me to be able to show up as my whole self now, instead of fragments of myself that I've been showing up as most of my life. Losing this control has allowed me to gain the freedom to be myself authentically, to go to God as myself, to show up and be the woman I need to be for the women I'm supposed to impact. It's allowed me to become the wife, the friend, the sister, whoever I need to be. It's allowed me to show up and be my whole true self and not feel a way about it. Nothing in life, in my life especially, is perfect at the moment, but there's nothing that I'm worried about right now either. Being able to lose this control has allowed me to gain a freedom that I would have never been able to experience post my breaking point, September 2022. So, as we finish up this conversation, I hope that you were able to get something out of this when it comes to your breaking point and losing that control, so you can start over and start creating the balance in your life that you deserve. Our faith, finances, and womanhood are intersected. There is, once we are able to grow with God and get to know him more and lean on him more, the more we won't worry about our finances, and that we can start, and we can start navigating our finances based on biblical principles, while also being able to become the women that God has called us to be individually. There is a voice, there is a generation, there is a seed that we are meant to plant for generations that we won't even see. And if we can get these three aspects aligned with our faith, there is nothing that anybody can do or say that can knock you off of your path, off of your journey, off of your assignment, because you get to show up as your whole self, and you get to have aspects working with each other that people say was impossible. When I started this series, when I started talking about creating balance in life, people were telling me that this thing was impossible. They were telling me that there's no such thing as having balance in life. Something always has to give. Although it is true that there are going to be ebbs and flows in your life, balance is still very well possible, especially if we look at balance as not something that we are navigating based off of rigidity, but flexibility. So, just a quick recap. We've talked about your breaking point and how it's really not the end that we often think it is, but it is our starting point to a new beginning and to a new season. We talked about the power of letting go and leaning on God and how losing control allows us to gain freedom and the balance in our faith, finances, and womanhood. And we talked about how once we get to that point of leaning on God, how we can show up and be the women that we are supposed to be and who we are called to be, and not the people or the women that the world says that we're supposed to be. If you leave this conversation with anything, I want you to remember that your breaking point doesn't define you. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that your life is over, essentially. It is an open door to a fresh start that a lot of us have to give ourselves permission to have. Um, we think that once we get our once we hit the brick wall that we're supposed to keep hitting it, and eventually a new route will make itself appear. But sometimes it's just us turning back around and going a different direction altogether. um, it's allowing you the space to just breathe and let go of things that you should not be holding on to anymore. This is a season that we all have to go through, and this is a season where you get to let go and let God do his job and allow him the room in your life to do what he has to do. So, if you have any questions or you have any comments about today's conversation, I want to be able to continue this conversation. This is an ongoing series. This is pretty much what I'm going to be doing on YouTube, just going live. I think I'm going to be going live mostly Sundays, but I might sprinkle in some Tuesdays and Thursdays as well, depending on what God tells me to do and the type of conversations and topics that come up in my mind. But if you have anything that you would like to add or that you want to ask about, feel free to drop them in the comment section or in the chat. If you're watching this live or if you're watching the replay, you can drop it in the comment section. I will give about 15 seconds to see if I see anything come up in the chat, and then go from there. Oh, and by the way, just a reminder, if you want the activity that will help you start navigating your breaking season, make sure to click the link in the description box or in the pinned comment down below once this live is over, so you can sign up for the A Balanced Life newsletter. Again, it's free, and the exercise in the newsletter will be going out tomorrow evening at the latest. It just depends on what happens with my dog after surgery. The old man has to get checked out. But I think it is going to be an activity that is going to be very beneficial. Oh, and actually, as a matter of fact, there was one question that I got once I started doing the reels leading up to this live stream. Someone had asked, when do you know, or how can you tell the difference between a bad day and actually your breaking point? That's a really hard question. And it's a really good question as well, because it's all about you being able to be open and honest with yourself about when you really need to reach out for help. Um, I knew it was my breaking point when I was just utterly exhausted and I felt depleted. It wasn't something a nap could cure. It wasn't something that, my CBD could help me with anymore. I was just, all of the coping skills and mechanisms that I was using no longer worked. I felt like at that point in my life, I was operating as a shell of myself. I didn't know who I was and I didn't like who I was. That's how I knew I was at my breaking point. The littlest things irritated me. I became an angry person, and it takes a lot for me to get to that point. I didn't recognize me anymore. And that's how I knew that I was at my breaking point. Um, a way that you can possibly tell that you're at your breaking point is pretty much the same way. Do you recognize who you are anymore? Have you pretty much given up on the goals and the assignments that have been on your spirit for however long? Do you feel like you are just living your life on a day-to-day basis and you're just, going with the flow because you have no other choice? Like, take a stock of your life, and if your ideal person or if your ideal self wouldn't live the life that you're living right now, and on top of having the emotional and mental, spiritual stresses, you're more than likely at your breaking point. But other than that, I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much for joining this conversation today. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and I'll be more than happy to continue this conversation.